Welcome, everyone, to NAAIM Confidential Live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to NAAIM Confidential Live. We have a really exciting show for you today. I'm pleasure to introduce Dr. Merav Ozair, who is a leading authority on emerging technologies at the intersection of finance and data science. She holds a PhD from NYU's Stern School of Business, founded Emerging Technologies Mastery, and has served on the faculty at Cornell, Wake Forest, and Rutgers universities, developing graduate courses on Web3, AI, and digital asset and market microstructure. Dr. Ozair sits on the advisory board of INATBA, that is the International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications, and is editor-in-chief of the World Scientific Series in FinTech. The CFA Institute has cited her as one of the nation's leading experts on cryptocurrency and blockchain, and NPR has described her as one of the foremost authorities on digital assets. Her current work focuses on implementing responsible AI, helping institutions design AI systems with built-in risk controls and fraud prevention layers that meet emerging regulatory standards. Dr. Ozair is a frequent keynote speaker, keynoting at the upcoming London Blockchain Conference in October, and advises global banks, fintechs, and regulators on integrating AI, blockchain, and quantum and advanced infrastructure into resilient end-to-end solution. Merav, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
So just before we start off, I have to let you know, thank you so much for joining. The work that we've been able to do together continues to shape the way that I look at the world today. Really early on, I was able to attend a course of yours and begin our friendship when you were at the CFA Society. Back then, it was the New York Society of Security Analysts, teaching about GARCH and heteroscedasticity for volatility modeling. And so the fact, here we are now continuing our friendship, and you giving of your time here, could not be happier.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm very excited. I'm very honored and for our friendship that we were able to keep it all those years.
Well, we've got a pretty rocking agenda for the attendees today. I guess let's jump right in. I know that one of the things that being able to lean into your expertise, I think a lot of people are looking at AI as sort of like these one-off tools and don't really think about it as the sort of holistic, let's say, ecosystem that it is. Let's jump into a little bit of the preparatory work we were talking about in order to start going into the layers of this ecosystem.
Okay, so allow me to share the slide with you here. Let me maybe while sharing. Okay, I will share and okay, share, and I'm gonna go to okay. So do you all see the slide?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. So, I mean, I know that everyone is focusing basically on the software over here and the applications that, comes up from the software. I mean, I know that yes, AI is software, like a lot of technologies, whether blockchain is software, a lot of them here are software. But in order for that software to really work, there's a whole ecosystem that needs supported. And if we think more what did I do? Sorry. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so if we think about it, then there's one concept. I don't know if you heard of why is it happening to me? I have to stop, using my. Okay, so if you think about it, then basically, the one thing that that we can think about. I don't know if you heard the term about AI factory. But the idea of AI factory now, that in order for this Gen AI and agentic AI and these are, I guess, all these terms you've probably heard about them. There's a lot of hype around it, the robotics, the humanoid, and all of that, everything that is going to advance, and to whether it's going to be utopian or dystopian, that's a different story. We'll talk about it at a different time. But there is a factory, a whole AI factory that needs to make it happen. So one thing for sure is one thing for sure is that basically you need data in order to have an AI. If you don't have data, you don't have AI. That's the basic rule. So no data, no AI, and this is why there's so much obsession about data. I mean, all of these LLMs, the big language, I mean, they probably already exhausted the web corpus. I mean, where else they can go? So now they're trying to get into all kinds of proprietary data. And this is why I can think that now if you are sitting on some good data, then this is something that you can monetize. And don't let anyone, touch it without, being able, to have control over it and monetize it, because that is where the real payoff is. Of course, there's also synthetic data that now, you can create, and that's a whole new story on its own. It has its own problem and benefits and problems. So it's a whole story. And also, how are you going to create the synthetic data? That's a different story. So that's another issue here. So now data is one thing. Now, if you have bad data, you have bad AI also. So of course, there's all the, cleaning and all of that, and all the data science that has to go behind it. That's another story. And where are you going to have this data? This is the data centers and the storage, and all of this, factory of how to store it and where to store it and how to organize it and all of that. And there are all kinds of companies who are providing that, and you probably know their names already, whether it's the data centers and the storage. We have Dell, and where we have IBM, and even Azure of Microsoft, or AWS of Amazon, and the Google and Google Cloud. So there's a bunch of them, whether they are specific to software companies or not. So there are a lot of them. So that's one aspect. Sorry, yeah.
So Rob, that was a couple of pretty well-known large cap companies. Do you think there's anybody in that data center place that's off the beaten track?
You mean like a startup that is trying, to build that?
I was just kind of seeing if there's other names within the space that perhaps we might have not heard of when we think about data, or the data infrastructure that goes into this.
I think that when it comes to data, you need the infrastructure, and there's a lot of cost in this infrastructure, not something that you have. So there are all these big companies that already made those investments. And if there's any startup that is trying to get in, they're going to buy them out anyways. So if you see a company that is a startup that is getting into that, they probably going to be, bought out by those big companies. So this is maybe a good opportunity to think about, that the next buyout. I mean, that's the way that I see it.
So we really are looking at an oligarchy for data centers and this sort of infrastructure going forward, it sounds like, just given the capital intensive nature of it.
Exactly. So you have all kinds of startups that, are coming with solutions for data centers to make it more efficient, to, whether it relates to liquid cooling and the switches and the cables, all of those, things, all kinds of solutions on how to integrate it and how to make it efficient, and how everything connects and store and optimizations and all of those things. There are companies who are doing that instead of building the infrastructure itself, which is a lot of, we're talking about billions of dollars. And those companies, I can tell you that you can see that little by little being kind of like bought out or invested by all these big companies. So you see, I mean, whether it's the Google or the NVIDIA or the Dell, they're all kind of like putting their investments in them, and then eventually someone is going to come completely come and buy them out. That's, I think, the nature of it. I mean, it's hard to see that some startup is going to come and rise to the top here.
All right.
In my mind, I might be wrong. I mean, someone can prove me wrong, and that's okay. But for now, that's what I see. Same goes, to the CPUs and GPUs. NVIDIA is one, that is the big name that's out there, and there's also AMD and Dell and all of that. But I can tell you something that people are missing about NVIDIA. NVIDIA is not just chips. They are basically very much involved in this entire AI factory. They are actually providing solutions like, the chips and all and the robotics, software. They're not really, creating, large language models like Google and all the startups, the DeepSeek and OpenAI and Anthropic and all of that. But either they're investing in those companies, this is one, or they even creating, they have their own software. They're investing a lot in robotics and humanoid. And for that, the LLM that you have today are not good enough. You need basically to go beyond LLM, beyond Gen AI, in order to actually have all this injecting AI and robotics. And they created something that is called world models, that this robotics, they can understand the world, which is very important. It goes beyond, the ChatGPT that you have. So they're investing that, they're creating that. I mean, but they're not really a software per se from that perspective, but they do have software like the CUDA, which is, for all the developers who are building on their GPUs, they're creating this platform of software platform. So they are investing in or partnering with, whether in, let's say, the networking companies or the ones that, that run the cooling or the NPUs and even blockchain, quantum, which I can talk about it in a second. But so they are partnering, investing in everything. So if you look at the portfolio of what they're doing, it's like, the entire ecosystem of AI. And even though people are thinking of them when they're talking about NVIDIA, oh, it's a chip company. It's not a chip company. It's way above and beyond that. And this is the way that I think that each and every big companies like that are basically thinking and expanding to more than just the software or the hardware or the chip or anything. If they're already big, they're already partnering with all of these companies because they know that someone needs their technology or whatever they're providing, but it's not enough. So they need to also partner with all the rest in order to still be in the game and enjoy from all the profit that is happening. So this is how it's coming about here. And there are companies. I mean, I mentioned, the big companies, like AIPC. What is AIPC? Basically, what we know right now that everything is in the cloud, right? But the on-prem, what we call, whether it's on your device, whether it's your PC, your laptop, your phone, how are these, going to be? How can you, especially if you're a big enterprise, a lot of enterprises, they like to keep it on-prem because from security and privacy issues. And this still exists big time. So how can you make sure that this on-prem still can have all the capabilities that, of the AI and the processing of AI? So there's what we call NPUs. I mean, there's a generic NPUs that NVIDIA and Qualcomm and Intel and all of those are creating. But also, the specific ones like Samsung's are creating their own for their own, products, or Apple are creating their own for their own products. So this is kind of the neural processing unit that you need for that. and it's pretty big. And Dell is basically providing like the entire ecosystem for enterprises to actually create, intelligence, to actually deliver this intelligence, how to use their data and build on uh, all these AI applications within the corporation, the enterprise itself. So this is something that is happening as well at the same time. Sorry, that not a lot of people are talking about it, but it's something that is happening. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dell, and looking further into what Dell's doing, it seems like one of the nuggets of wisdom for us here. Certainly, um, that's fantastic how they are continuing to adapt and evolve into the common space in the current space. How about what do you see are near-term bottlenecks? I always think about, hey, just trying to move data around is a pretty hard thing to do. I know we were talking about dark fiber, or the amount of dark fiber that's available. We're building on top of a telecommunication infrastructure that's coming up on 30 years old or plus now. And, do you see that as a bottleneck, or do you see liquid cooling and more efficient cooling processes as a bottleneck? Perhaps it's all the above. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, if you think about even the storage itself, what data centers are happening, because this is where, everything is processing, the cloud processing. So it's miles of cables. And I'm talking about cables to process just, for the AI and all of that. Forget about the GPUs. I mean, all of those cables, it's miles of cables. And if you're going to create even more data centers, you need even more miles of cables like that. And the networking, and a lot of companies that are providing the cables and the switches and all of that are also providing, the networking. The companies like that. I mean, that you can think about. There are Cisco and HP and Juniper, sorry, and again, it's a big names, and there are other companies, small companies. I can maybe send a list, of those, are getting into that with specific new solutions, but those startups are invested. I mean, the ones that invest in them are the big companies.
Right.
So
Cool.
it's very interesting that you have the startups, but they need the money. And where are they getting that? From those big companies who are actually, need the solutions and they're investing in them. So if you are a startup that is creating solutions, to make it more efficient and everything, that's a good thing, because you know that you can get the funding from these big companies because they need it. So they are all kinds. So yeah.
What are the cables made out of?
I mean, the cables, I mean, there's copper, there's a lot of copper. And I think that all this now, I know what's happening with the tariff, a little bit with the copper is a little bit, a question mark. So we have to think about that. But a lot of copper, that goes into that. That's and of course, and if you think about communication, again, the AIPC, they need, of course, the dark fiber, which is also, a problem by itself. So the companies, the Verizon, AT&T, and the other companies, are providing that, but that can be a bottleneck. So the cooling is also a problem. So all of that, but I can tell you that. So it's the supporting ones. I mean, there was for a while, the GPUs were kind of a bottleneck. It's this I mean, this bottleneck probably got a little bit eased a little bit, but it still might be a bottleneck depending of how it's going to advance. But I think the next one, and I think a lot of companies already mentioned that, Zuckerberg also and others, is power, is the energy. The energy and everything that connects to that, that's going to be a real bottleneck, because in order to power all of this, you need the energy. So you have the electricity, but this is not enough. And it's costly. So you need two things. One, you need to make it less costly. I think someone made a kind of an assessment and said, let's say, now everything is going to be done by AI. Forget humans. And this is, what everyone is talking about, right? But from power perspective, from a computation perspective, it's even more costly for an AI to do the job than the human to do the job at the end of the day.
Mm.
So from a cost perspective, it doesn't make sense, right? So you have to come with really, I mean, for the scalability and sustainability, and even to sustain this, you have to come with solutions for the energy to make it more efficient. I mean, all these GPUs and the software and everything has to be more efficient. They're not, I mean, this is why you will see all these advances in the hardware itself,
Right.
in the software, in the networking and the cooling and all of that, and all the optimizations and everything. It has to be advanced, and you have to pay attention to everyone's coming up with a solution, then focus on that. That probably will be the next thing and the next trend. And if there's none, then that's a bottleneck, and this is where it's going to kind of like get to a stall. But the energy is a big issue. It's really a big issue. And you can see that even the big companies are investing in all of these alternatives, whether it's the hydrogen, geothermal, the nuclear. And now the renewable energy, there's already a renewable energy with, I'm talking about the wind and the solar. The problem is with this, and we experienced that, we saw just that, in April at Portugal and Spain, they got had this outage. Part of it, they're saying that they don't know exactly what the reason is. I mean, they're not expressing, but maybe part of it is that they base mostly on renewable energy. But remember, if you wanted this AI, and they need to work 24/7, then you need something that is reliable, not wind and not solar. It has to be much more, and also renewable energy as of now, it's kind of more costly than electricity, to be honest. So it's not really solving the problem. It may be cleaner, but not reliable and not, less expensive. So you need to find something that is less expensive. And one of the things that people are thinking about is the geothermal hydrogen, which is basically heat from the interior of the earth, and there are all kinds of experiments about that. It's cleaner, it's very consistent, unlike the other renewable ones. So there's a lot of research now about that and experiments. In fact, most of them are happening outside of the US, unfortunately. Like in Toshiba is doing that, in Mexico and other places, but there are also some companies in the US that are doing that. For example, there's a fuel cell energy, there's Air Liquid. There are some companies who are experimenting with that. So it's something to focus on, and I can see a future with that. If someone will come up with a solution, that probably will be the next power energy. Nuclear, there's a lot of experiments with that as well. And it has to be efficient. Remember, it's not enough that we come up with new supporting energy, but we also have to, all this factory here has to be much more efficient with the hardware and the software and the cables and the network and the switches and all of that. They have to be more efficient because there's so much, if really everyone is going to use it and for everything, then there's a lot of power and a lot of computing and a lot of scalability that needs to happen. And therefore, we have to think about this entire ecosystem, how that's going to work. And just thinking about, okay, ChatGPT and Gen AI and all of that. In fact, even Gen AI, if you just think about it, this is not the end game. Because in order for this robotics and humanoid, you probably, I don't know, you've seen the movies, Star Trek, there's this character called Data that is kind of a humanoid, is very, empathic. And, that's, probably the humanoid that you would have liked to happen, not the Schwarzenegger, the exterminator. You don't want that one, you want Data. So in order for that to happen, let's say we're going to have that, then Gen AI, as we have now the LLMs, that now we have the ChatGPT, is not the end game. It doesn't have the reasoning and the planning and all the probably, or even, it seems like Data was the character was even, I don't know, had some conscience. I mean, I don't know, it seems as if, I mean, and all of those things, you need to come up with other solutions, other type of models and software and all that. So there's so much to go around in order to get to that. And I know that Silicon Valley is saying tomorrow we're going to have a solution, and tomorrow everyone is going to be out of jobs and everything. This is not happening tomorrow.
So,
And, sorry, yeah. And I just want to, if you, I mean, I'll let you ask a question, but I want to say a few words later about blockchain. But I'll let you ask the question. Sorry.
well, I mean, I think it could be appropriate now, because if we zoom in and we think about, okay, what are the applications of this, right? We're looking at a landscape from a 10,000-foot view, but let's say as a business owner, right, or as the leadership of a larger organization, we're really starting to push of what we see as responsible or irresponsible, and as far as risk management. I mean, how do you think about responsibilities, either at the individual responsibility or institutional responsibility? If you had a magic wand, how would you see defining these two areas?
Okay. So yeah, I know everyone is waiting for regulations. Um, yeah, I mean, we have the EU, the responsible, the only region that actually sat down and created um, a big legislation about a responsible AI is the EU. But is it enforceable? As of now, it doesn't seem that it's very much enforceable. I mean, it got into effect last August, not this August, I mean last year. And how much is, I mean, I haven't heard too much enforcement. So yes, and even the GDPR, about the privacy that they have is not so enforceable if you think about it. Yes, we have that, but companies are violating, GDPR right and left. And so, and we see that. So here's the point. You have to think about, it's like, okay, I want to drive, but I want to be responsible and protect myself. So even if they are not, enforceable regulations, I want to make sure that I'm going to, make sure that I have my car has, I make sure that the maintenance, the brakes are working, everything is working. I'm putting my seatbelt, taking care, paying attention to the sign. So I take my own responsibility and making sure that at least from my end, I'm doing the best I can. Of course, accidents can happen because they're always, lunatics, they're running and things can happen. But I have to take my responsibility for my own safety, so to speak, right? So that is the way that I think about, how individuals and also organizations should think about when we're talking about how to implement how to implement all these AI applications, whether you are implementing actually know that you are using it, or you are using it without even knowing that you're using it.
Right.
Because there's hidden AI in everything. All the CRM that you're using, all the ERP that you're using, they all have AI. It's hidden. They're not telling you that they're using AI. Sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't tell you, but there's hidden AI. And you don't know what the privacy, policy is, what they're using the data, where it is stored, whatever, once, you actually using their product, without even, I don't know, they're not even telling you that, but they're using your data to train the models to provide, better service, and you don't know where it is stored, how it is going to be trained or used, and everything like that. So there's this hidden, risk that you have. And on top of that, there's also like what we call like the third, fourth, fifth party risk, because they are also partnering with other companies, whether it's for the storage or the computing or anything else, just think about what happened with CrowdStrike. You remember that issue, you know?
Yeah.
So, and suddenly, you know, you learn that, you know, it happened to CrowdStrike, and a bunch of, you know, hundreds of companies were affected because that was the third party or fourth party in some cases that of those companies, and then, you know, then everybody else was affected. So
Yeah.
this is something that, and especially organizations have to ask, you know, they're, let's say, engaging with a CRM or any product. They should ask, okay, are you using AI? How are you using it? Who are your third party? Where are you storing the data? What is the privacy? And then you have to put, you know, either negotiate with them. Sometimes it's not enough, and put your own guardrails in place.
Okay.
Actual guardrails, not just you know, policies. Policies on, you know, as I said, you know, it's like, you know, it doesn't have teeth, and we need something that, you know, you can really actualize it. And just to give you an example, what happened, you know, with blockchain. In fact, there's Intel and NVIDIA have partnered with Hedera. Hedera is a blockchain company. Is it blockchain, like, you know, like, I don't know if you know the space, it's like a Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of that.
Sure.
The nice thing that they have a whole slew of what they call equity lab. It's not equity as we know in finance, but it is EQTY. Which it's basically to verify computing. So they have all the consensus and everything, you know, the protocols, you know, of Hedera. So the idea of this partner, I'm just, you know, I don't want to be too technical, but the idea is that the chips that Intel, whether the CPUs of Intel or the GPUs of NVIDIA, are embedding the blockchain, you know, protocol of Hedera, meaning that it's going to be immutable, meaning that, you know, transparent, you know, all of whatever, you know, all the operation transactions and everything that is happening on this chip, GPU, CPUs, all these chips, you know, are going to be recorded and be transparent. You can see the entire, you can track it. It is immutable. You cannot erase anything. All this information is so, you know, everything can be verifiable, and everything can be traced to the second and the millisecond of what is happening in these chips. And they're building, you know, these labs where developers, you know, can create all of these things. So this is one thing if you really, you know, want to go, and basically, with smart contracts, you can create your own protocols that all these policies, and whether it's the enterprise policies or the regulations, are going to be embedded and enforced within the chip itself or within this application itself. So this is the way that companies have to think. And if they're not that kind of a company, they're just using CRM and all of that, they also have to think about how they're going to protect themselves in terms of the security that they have to put in place, the privacy that they have to put in place, etc. So it's, I think, something that it's the organizations, whether they're small or large, or even the individuals, to take the responsibility and own their safety and security and privacy.
And how do I learn more about this? Because I was looking up, you said Frontera? Well, how do you spell this? I got
Hedera. Hedera is HTDERA.
Okay. And so I have some friends that are in the Solana space, and that seems to have gotten a bump recently because of some ETFs that have expanded to then trading derivatives of Solana. How would you compare Hedera and Solana?
Well, I think, I mean, yeah, I know Solana and I know Hedera, but I think that Hedera has much more to offer from this, you know, from this ecosystem than Solana, because they have always been. Oh, they're also much more energy efficient than all the bunch of the other blockchain, by the way. They are much more scalable.
Right.
They've always been into their responsibility and the security and all of that. They've been a lot effective. And their knowledge and expertise in AI are much more than all the rest. The one reason in particular is that the founders of Hedera basically have a deep background in AI. So even though they built it at the beginning, as a blockchain solutions, but I think it was kind of like inevitable that they're gonna, branch into that space
Right.
because of that.
So they're uniquely positioned in order to help with the infrastructure of AI.
Yes.
They're uniquely positioned in order to have the understanding the correct protocols to create the incentivizations. I mean, that was kind of the only thing I've sort of wondered as I think about like how blockchain and AI would overlap is that what I've seen in other blockchains is you really need to incentivize the miner or the algorithm that's solving the code, and you need to give them something in order to solve it and solve it fast and efficiently. What are you giving them in order to solve for these type of problems?
Well, I mean, you have to understand, first of all, Hedera there's no miners here.
Okay.
It's a different protocol altogether. It's proof of stake or
Right,
something.
proof of stake, yeah.
Yeah, something else. So the incentives are different, although there are incentives, and there is a whole consensus for that. I don't want to get too technical, but there are incentives. They're not about the winner takes it all. Even Ethereum moved to proof of stake, by the way,
Right.
the big one. So there are different incentives about it's there are also penalties if you're not really doing the right thing and you're not really verifying what you're supposed to verify. So there's penalties on top of just getting an incentive to do the right thing.
Right.
So it's a different type of protocol, and I don't want to get too much into the details. It's not also the winner takes it all. It's divided into groups of verifiable. I call them verifiers, the verifiers rather than miners, because they're not miners, they're verifiers, validators are they called. And those validators, they get an incentive. They have to stake, of course, a lot, their own capital. And if they're doing something wrong, if they're penalized, it's been taken out. So this is they have kind of skin in the game, so to speak. So it's a different story, and it's not based on who does it faster. And this is where computing is coming from, and it shouldn't be about the computing power and trying to solve a puzzle in order to win like with Bitcoin. Because it's all about energy and time and scalability, and it has to be really for the milliseconds, and Bitcoin is not, as we know, it's not that scalable. So it's a different protocol, and I can have a whole lecture on that, or I can even send if you think it will be
Well, I like this. I like what you're saying here about penalties as opposed to just rewards for being able to solve.
yeah.
So this might be like a nonsensical question, so you can just tell me, Ken, forget about it. But
No,
like,
it's okay.
can you penalize models for hallucinating?
Oh, hallucination. Okay, that's interesting. The I don't think that it has been done yet, even though all these models can hallucinate.
Mhm.
But it's an interesting story. Interesting, and this is something that I'm kind of like pushing for, is that to have all of these softwares built on through on the blockchain to verify everything. and yes, create this kind of penalties through the smart contract. For example, now everyone is talking about agentic AI. What is agentic AI? You have all these agents that are going to work on your behalf. But how are you going to control them? How are you going to make sure that they're not going to do something that they're not supposed to do? They're not going to go, kind of like rogue and, I don't know, spend all your money and splurge on things, you
Yeah.
don't even ask
Tungsten
for.
cubes. Yeah, buy tungsten cubes.
Exactly. So, and this is something that, I'm saying this is why you need the blockchain in order to do it. So, it's all going to be digitized, right? All these agent is machines, basically. What is the agent? It's not, agent. It's a machine. It's a software that, is going to do X, Y, Z on your behalf. Now you want to control it. Even if it's automated, you have to control it. How are you going to control it in a way that makes sense? Even though you're not in the room, so to speak. How do you can, control your kids when you're not in the room? So, yeah, you can monitor them. This is one thing. The other thing is that you can penalize them through the smart contracts. And that's what I love about smart contracts. They are basically an automation, a software, but you can put all kinds of rules. So let's say you see, so to speak, that the agent is about to do something that it's not supposed to do, and you immediately block it or penalize it or do something that it's not allowed to do what it's supposed to do. It's not allowed, it's not letting it to go through. It's not allowing it, it's penalizing it. So, remember, AI is something that learns from its mistakes.
Right.
So if you penalize and penalize, like, like a kid, eventually, I mean, if it's a smart kid, eventually they will stop making the mistakes, right?
Maybe. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I
It's
mean,
interesting. It's interesting concept. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's almost like you have a secondary penalization or rules enforcement engine that's monitoring in advance, almost sort of like a checker that is in control of a smart contract or in control of a set of incentives that will nudge away if the if it's considered hallucination, and certainly the validation for what that regulating front forward algorithm would look like or do or behave. Certainly, I think that
I can tell you that, in fact, if you're talking, if you let's take it, remember that everything is going to be digitized, and people are talking about, stable coins. There's a Genius, Act that, came in effect. So I think that the tokenization, everything is going to be tokenized, BlackRock is talking about that, thing.
Robinhood.
Yeah, Robinhood. I mean, but I'm even talking about the big organization, the big institution, like the JP Morgan, the Goldman Sachs, and they're all doing that, already. They all have their, stable coins, and it's global. It's all over the place, and we see it in the EU and everywhere. So there's a stable coins, there's the tokenization issue, and everything is going to be tokenized. That's for sure. Now, the beauty of tokenization, and this is why this is why I'm saying blockchain and crypto are two different things. So as of now, I hope you understand that the blockchain technology has a lot of benefits. I mean, I'm not talking about the crypto hype and all this, speculators.
I understand.
Yeah. So, but tokenization is basically, even you can tokenize securities, regular securities that we have today, or ETFs that we have today. I mean, and in fact, other than the benefits of, the 24/7s and the efficiency and the reduced cost and everything, it's basically, in terms of compliance, it allows you to enforce compliance, something that as of now,
Right.
It's a layer that, the SEC has to watch and, and monitor, and maybe, it's gonna, and all these other regulators have to watch and see and whether you're doing the right thing or not. And you still have front runners and all kinds of things like that. However, Hedera and is one of them, and there's, I think they were one of the first, but the other newer, like the Arbitrum and also done that. But Hedera is very, as I told you, they've always been like very much into, compliance and security and stuff. And they already embedded in the protocol to prevent front running. So if you are going to, let's say, use a blockchain, and tokenize something through them, then all this, compliance with the regulations can be already embedded within the protocol itself and the smart contract itself. So it is by design enforceable. So the compliance, I mean, when people are talking about, oh, wow, why should we move to blockchain technology? That's even another incentive from a compliance perspective, and really protecting the investors and the traders and all of those when we're talking about, investors protection and everything. So,
Yeah, it's really just the same thing I said before, but the idea of the tokenization being a source of penalties in the smart contracts, not just a source of incentivization. I think it's a really interesting new way of looking at sort of a more controlled and a more rules-based approach towards implementing. So I think with that, Merav, do you have any words of wisdom you want to send us off with?
well, I mean, again, as I said, this is, whatever I was talking about, the solutions, as I said, it's from an enterprise perspective and industry's perspective, and also for small organizations. So there are solutions. I'm always happy to provide help for that and advice. But the word of wisdom that I would like, there's one quote that I always like to talk about when I'm a great believer in technology. I talked about a lot of risk and this and that, but as you can see, it has the benefits. It has also some risk, but even the technology itself, if you basically put it together, so like I call it like a holistic and comprehensive solution, when you put all these technologies together, you can really get the right solution. And it's not just the AI or just the blockchain and just the cloud computing. And so you have to have all of that working, you need blockchain to basically make sure that AI is behaving, right? But blockchain cannot do everything, and you need the AI for all kinds of predictives and optimizations and all kinds of other things. You need all this energy, you need the cables, so you need everything. So, and this is why when I'm talking, there's always something, I very believe in technology, and I'm saying, don't be afraid to dream. Dream, and then technology follows. It's always true. It always happens. And as humans, we've been very creative, very innovative. We just have to think about the solutions. And the solutions will never come from just one technology or one hardware or one solutions. It could be combinations of solutions, and for everything that will be applied from the individual to up to enterprises and the industry and the economy, global economy as a whole. And if from a finance perspective, if you think about it, the financial industry has evolved with technology. The trading, the investing, if you think about it, we started, if we're talking about the trading, we started with the outcry. Now everything is digitized. You can do everything from your phone. I mean, who would have thought that that could happen? But that is happening today. If you think about even the instruments that we have today are things, that we couldn't imagine before technology happened. So it will impact everything. And the way we think about, and therefore, the next step will be the tokenization of everything. That's inevitable. It's going to happen, especially with the AI. I mean, how these agents are going to work on your behalf. How are you going to digitize it? How everything has to be digital. I mean, it's not going to be cash based. It's not going to be through an app. How do you control them? How do you do all of this? It has to be tokenized, and the token itself, You can put, all kinds, each and every agent will have its own token and its own, kind of controls and penalties and everything. So this is how you have to think about it. I think that this is where it's going. I'm not dreaming. Yes, I'm dreaming, I guess say, you have to dream in order to actually eventually create something. So you have to think about the future. So it's not going to happen in one day. So you have to think about the steps, which I just mentioned a few steps here, okay, near term, what's going to happen, in, medium term, and then, think about the long term. So this is how we have to think about how this is going to progress, because eventually everything is going to be very digitized, everything in any industry, and definitely the financial industry.
Well, we're incredibly lucky to have your voice, your insights, your guidance for way things are working today, the bottlenecks, the fragility, where there's strength, where there's oligarchy, where there's existing incumbents that are continuing to evolve. And we're incredibly lucky to have the foresight for how we are able to responsibly implement these new technologies. So, Merav, with that, thank you so much for your time today. Cannot wait to see you next time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.